New York area about 3 years ago. And I was on a team for the first couple of years I was out there. I'd done independent research forever, for over 20 plus years. And I thought, okay, it's time for me to, do this team thing. Everybody's got this paranormal team. Let me see what it's all about. And I got on this team, and let's just say the leader of the team and I didn't share the same perspective. His perspective was, he was hell-bent on proving scientifically that the paranormal exists, which I think is a great credible cause for people that want to follow that path. And I think that there's certainly a place for that. But in the same token, a lot of these great historical places, like the Hinsdale House and Waverly Hills and Rolling Hills, and all these great places that are known to be paranormally active, he was kind of like, those are the Glory Haunts. Those are the Glory Haunts. Everybody knows about those places. Anybody can go there. You just pay your money. They just want your money. They want your money, And I love these places. If I can pay a few dollars to go to a place and help keep the heat on and help keep the building open, I don't have a problem with that. But he apparently did. So we had a little bit of a disagreement when I decided to start my own thing. I said, I've done this for many, many years. I need to really do my own thing. So I thought, he's always insulting the Glory Haunts. So I'm going to be the Glory Haunt Hounds, because I'm going to go and I'm going to sniff out and I'm going to find new places. I'm going to find new locations that haven't been on the TV shows. I want to see how I can help the community, how I can help New York historically. I'm a history lover first and a paranormal researcher second. I've always loved history. So how can I bring the two together in a unique and creative way? So I'm going to be the Glory Haunt Hounds, and that's that. So no, I'm not, I don't pray before every investigation. I'm not overly religious, and I have no problem with people who are, but a lot of people think glory, I must, maybe we're going to sing a hymn before we go upstairs. Something like that, and there's nothing, we're not going to be doing adult things or anything like that. So erase that thought from your mind. That's the straight of it. So I thought, is anybody in the room here Irish?
No.
Irish?
Oh,
All right,
wow.
so tomorrow, is there anybody in the room here that'll be Irish tomorrow? Exactly. So with St. Patrick's Day being tomorrow, there's something I don't normally do when I do a lecture or do a talk. I wanted to tell a little bit of a story about Ireland, a little cute ghost story that I actually found out about the other day. A lot of people know some of the famous ghost stories of Ireland, about Lep Castle and some of the stories like that, some of the things we've heard about, some of the great hauntings. Someone said to me, if you're going to talk about Ireland, you should really talk about banshees and fairies and things like that. And I'm like, I've lived with a banshee in the past, and I know how they're I don't need a lecture about that, so let's find something a little different. So I actually did a little research and found out the place I've actually been. I've only been to Ireland once, and I'm 100% Irish, unless you actually look at my genealogy, and I'm like 25% Irish, but we don't talk about that. So I did a little research and found a place that I had been out there. St. Patrick's Cathedral has a ghost story. I don't know if any of you guys have heard this or not. There was an actual, and I'll use my notes to give you the guy's name if you want to look it up. It's supposed to be a true story. So, but it's Irish folklore, so, after a few Guinness, they're all true stories. Right? So this actually took place in 1863. It was a captain of a ship named John McNeill Boyd. John McNeill Boyd was a famous sailor, how famous as you can be in 1863, but he would go out to sea quite often and come back, and one time he was out to sea with his whole crew of probably about 12 sailors, and it was a horrible stormy night, one of these perfect storm kind of nights where the waves were crashing and boom and all over the place, and it was just terrible. So as he was coming home from this storm, he got probably about half a mile or a mile from shore, didn't see it, navigated right into a pile of rocks, crushed the boat, went under. Him and his whole crew never to be found again, except for the very next morning when his Newfoundland dog swam to shore and they found it. So they found Mr. McNeill Boyd's dog, and John McNeill Boyd was a very respected member of the Dublin community, and they decided he was going to be buried at St. Patrick's Cathedral. There's a graveyard outside of the cathedral, and he was going to be buried there. So the people that were responsible for having his funeral and putting on the procession decided that the dog was the only survivor. The dog should attend the ceremony and be there. So when the dog was brought to the ceremony, the dog actually sat next to the grave and he just stared at it the whole time. He just stared at it. So they tried to bring the dog. I think it was a relative of Mr. McNeill Boyd's that tried to bring the dog home at night. And you've heard similar stories about other dogs. I've heard a more recent one about a dog doing something like this too. But at night he would continue to find his way back to the cathedral, sit at his owner's tombstone, and just sit and wait. The dog refused to eat. The dog sat there for about a week and passed away on his owner's grave. And that story is supposedly a true story. And ever through the years, at St. Patrick's Cathedral, on the date of the anniversary of this person's death in April, hundreds of witnesses have said they've seen the shadow of this black dog sitting next to the grave, and you can see there's shadow pictures from there, and I just thought that was a neat story, that how loyal the animals and pets can be, that could happen. He could just sit there for years, and he just didn't want to be without his owner, and 200 years later, he's still there. So I just want to give not a little bit of a sad story, but after a few Guinness tomorrow, you guys will all be laughing about it, and it'll be fun. So
green Guinness.
So let me talk a little bit more about para-history. Now, it's a term that I've used, that our guys from up here beyond ghosts use a lot. Para-historians, para-history. I call myself a ghost-storian because it sounds cool, and I stole it from somebody else, but I liked it. So, what we really do, or what I try to do, is I like to connect history with the paranormal. So, my team and myself, we don't go in, we're not the people that go in when someone's got poltergeist. Like, say someone was living here at Hinsdale today, and they had all this activity that goes on here. I'm not the guy you would call, because there's so many people that do that. I want to focus in a different area. And because history was always my first love, I decided what I wanted to do is I've been to a lot of these famous historical haunted places that I mentioned before, the Rolling Hills, the Waverly Hills, the Buffalo Central Terminal, and places all over the country and all over the world for that matter. Myrtle's Plantation down in New Orleans is a great place. I wanted to try to raise awareness to some of the places that aren't so well known, but I wanted to have a different approach. So let me ask you guys a question here. How many people in the room are on a team, paranormal team? Guys, I know there's people out there. Guys that were up here before on paranormal
John
team.
just walked in.
Oh, he's here? Great.
He made it.
So, as a paranormal team or an independent researcher, too many times, not too many times, but a lot of times people will think about what they want to do for their research. So it's important to them. It's important to all of us who are doing paranormal research that we want to try to find what we call evidence as much as we can. We want to go to these places, these great haunted locations, these great places we've heard about on TV, these places we've seen on TV, and experience these things that we've all heard about. But what I want to do is a little bit different. I always try to find places, and I always try to approach them in a different way. So when I go to a location, or when I'm finding a location, I always try to go in first as a historian. The last thing I'll do is tell people that I'm a paranormal researcher. A, I don't like the door slammed in my face, and B, I just don't. It's not my number one goal of interest. I feel like if I can do the right thing, that'll come to me later. So what I try to do is I'll go in, I'll do a lot of research on the buildings I'm going to go into. I will go talk to the owners, and I'll say, look, how can I help you? How can I help you raise awareness of your building? How can I help you pay the bills in the winter? And keep these buildings open. I'll specifically look for places that do not have any paranormal history. And I firmly believe, and I hope some of you believe this too, that the paranormal is all around us everywhere we go. So it's not just that way. The paranormal doesn't watch TV. Like the spiritual energy, ghosts, whatever you want to call it, they don't watch Ghost Centers or Ghost Adventures. They don't go, oh man, Steve's ghost was on Ghost Adventures. I'm going to go there next week. It doesn't work like that. So, I like to try to say, or like to try to have the mindset that this stuff is happening all around us. Let's try, as a historical lover, I try to bring in what I can do to help. I'll do a fundraiser, I'll do a location search, and bring in my help however I can, whether it be helping clean up the yard, helping to fix up the building. And then if later on down the road I built that connection with them, they want to let me come in there and do my research, that's fine. That's not my number one goal. And I'll use an example of something we did recently. There's a building, you guys are all familiar with Saratoga, New York, the racetrack and all that good stuff. There's a building out there called the Brookside Museum. Now, the Brookside Museum was built at the late 1700s. I want to say it was like 1792-ish in that area. The building has been a ton of things throughout the years. And a lot of these things, first it was a hotel. It was one of the very first hotels built in that area of New York in the late 1700s. It was that for many years. It then later became a boys' school for many years, and also a sanitarium and a private residence. It was actually a private residence to one of the New York City's wealthiest citizens, and his name's going to escape me now, but he ran one of the first fashion magazines, actually in the 1800s, for men's and women's clothing, and he became an entrepreneur in the fashion world. He lived at this is his private house, and this is literally a mansion. Now, when I approached this location, I thought to myself, I did a lot of my research, I found out my history, I thought to myself, This place, there's no record of any paranormal history here. There's no record of any ghost stories, anything happening. This place has got to be a hotspot with all those thousands and thousands and thousands of energies that pass through the halls in this building. There's got to be something to it. So I went to them and I approached them and I said, you know, I made the mistake, and as I've learned from this, then I sort of said that, you know, we belong to a paranormal research group, and no, we have children's programs here. We can't be associated with ghosts. You know, nobody can think this place is haunted. I can't have that. It's all, you know, can't do it. And I said, well, look, I don't want to come and investigate here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to, but no, I mean, I saw on your website you guys are looking for pencils, pens, crayons, paper clips. I mean, this is a historical society getting no support from the community to the point where they don't even have paper for their children's programs that they're running. I said, well, how can I come in and how can I help you? Well, what do you want? Nothing. I want to help you. I love history. I asked her, I said, what is the likeliness that if you guys don't raise some funds this winter that you're going to have to close down and not open again until the summer? About 80% that we'd have to close, and we can't just stop our children's programs altogether. Well, you know, what would happen if we ran a program, we did it around Halloween time, we brought in some great speakers, and we raised some money for you, and we won't present it as a haunted house or as a ghostly place or as a paranormal event, simply telling ghost stories, maybe we showing a movie, doing some things, and bringing people in that are interested in this thing. It's Halloween time. You want to take advantage of your audience this time of the year. So they thought, oh, well, you know, that's not a bad idea. Well, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do that. I guess we could do that. So worked on it for a while, and one of the great friends of mine out here, Reverend Tim Shaw, who's been out here before, you guys know, from also Para X, which is the station my show's on. He came down, Chris DeCesare, Geneseo College, which I think is somewhere in western New Yorkish, kind of.
And Northeast area.
He had experienced a haunting in 1985, and he's a part of a movie called Please Talk With Me, which is a phenomenal paranormal movie. If you haven't seen it, if you look for it, it should be out on DVD coming out this spring or summer. Amazing movie. He came out and we did this whole presentation. We ended up, between our volunteering time and volunteer hours that we ended up raising over $5,000 for this location. I took zero from that. And a month later, my phone rang. Hey, do you guys want to come in and do an investigation here? So it's all really about, and that was secondary nature to me. I wanted to show what the paranormal community can do if we all work together and try to help people and try to do things other than just saying the natural instinct, which is, geez, I'd love to get into this place because I heard the history here where there's got to be a lot of ghosts here and I'd love to find out. Of course we all love to do that, but you know, let's take it from a different standpoint. Let's take a different approach. You know, so I have a little challenge that I like to send out there to people in the paranormal community, people that have teams, people that do research or maybe go to some of these locations. You know, try to find a place that's never been investigated before. Those are the best locations to get into. These places are great, but if you get in a place that no one's ever been in before, you have no idea what to expect. You have nothing in your mind from what you've seen on TV. You have no preconceived notion. You just have whatever happens to find that way. But approach it in a different way. Go to these historical places. If you love history like I do, and you hate seeing these buildings getting torn down and demolished, and thank God for Bill Connolly and what Believe Paranormal is doing with this house, because there's a lot of history here. You know, this right here, having this building open as a paranormal research facility is huge. I know it, you know, as a glance, these meetups are fun and they're great, but it speaks volumes for what somebody could do. When Bill bought this place, he wanted to buy it and open a paranormal research facility. But number one, he wanted to save the house. It was going to be demolished. I mean, if he didn't buy it, we wouldn't be sitting here today, most likely, right? Is that true? So,
yeah. 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So, I mean, time and time again, people think, well, why do I want to save an old sanitarium? All terrible things happen there. Or why do I want to save this? Because it's history, it's structures. You know, if it's not there, it's going to be a mall or a parking lot. We have enough malls, enough parking lots. You know, let's reach out to the community that surrounds us all day, surrounds us everywhere we go, and try to help. And then, you know, the good things will come. It's karma. It'll come back to you. Be good. So, you know, that's what I like to say about paranormal and history. If you have any questions about parahistory, I will definitely answer it for you, what that means more. Gentleman here, John Crescito, is over in the room. I always butcher his name. With Beyond Ghosts, we're actually going to be having a parahistory convention in Lake George, New York, coming up April 26th and 27th. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end here. But we're actually bringing in people from all over the paranormal community, a lot of the celebrities you see on TV and stuff, and focusing specifically on this parahistory. And those people that you see lecture at a lot of different conventions, they're going to focus their lectures on locations that you may not have heard of and how they were able to get in there and perhaps help these locations and bring awareness. It's all about awareness. And as a historian first, I just hate to see these buildings crumble to the ground. And that's, honestly, I mean, $5,000 is not a lot of money. That's not going to keep the building open forever, but it paid their heating bill all winter. So, that made me feel good. And of course, like I said, nobody had ever been in there before. They called me. I didn't even ask. So that's a great thing that you can get the reward from that. So I just wanted to make you aware about what parahistory really is and what it's all about and what we try to do. I also want to ask you something. So everybody in this room, I hate the term I use loosely, ghost, right? Some people call it a ghost. Some people hate the word ghost. I use it because everybody knows what you mean when you say ghost, right? You could say energy and spiritual energy, and you can call it all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, if you say ghost, people generally know what you're speaking of. So I like to ask people, what is a ghost? Because there's different thoughts and different theories out there. So let me just ask a few people in the room. And there's no wrong answers here. This is all strictly opinion, and I'm not Bill Nye the Science Guy. I'm not going to try to prove you wrong, And trust me, I know what a ghost is. I've seen Scooby-Doo. So I totally know what it's all about. So let me just ask a few people out here, though. What do you think? What is a ghost?
It's a presence.
Presence, okay. Anybody else? What is a ghost?
The energy left behind the head of somebody who hasn't crossed over.
Okay, very good. Very good. Anybody else? A couple more people. Spirit, okay. The spirit of?
Spirit energy.
Okay, okay. Anybody else? We have one more.
Something that goes bump in the night.
Something that goes bump in the night. I like that answer. That's actually pretty
Chains
good.
rattling.
So, the general philosophy, now those are all great answers, and those are perfect answers. 4 or 5 different answers. They all kind of mean the same thing. The general conception of what is a ghost is it's the spirit energy, or perhaps the soul or spirit of a deceased person. That's what we've all seen on Scooby-Doo, on Ghost Hunters, on Ghost Adventures, on In Search Of back in the day. I'm dating myself here now, of course. That's incredible. One of the first ghost stories I saw as a kid was actually on the show That's Incredible. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that show. It was like John Davidson or somebody. You ever see the show they had on there? It was about the Toys R Us ghost in Sunnyvale, California.
I just heard about that.
Yeah. So when I was like 8 years old and I watched the story of the Toys R Us ghost, man, I'm telling you what, I was like scared and excited at the same time. So I was like the weird nerd kid that went around to Toys R Us like around the corners going like this. And I was just waiting. I'd stare at the shelf. I'm pretty sure they thought I was completely nuts because I'd stare waiting for the teddy bear to come flying off the shelf like I saw on TV. It never happened. So, I had to move on after that. And my parents said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Wait, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Oh, no. And then my parents were like, ghosts don't exist. There's no such thing as ghosts. And we were all told that as a kid, right? I mean, most of us. Unless we had really cool parents, everyone, oh, no, there's no monster in your bed. There's no ghost don't exist. So we were taught to believe that. So I like to have a little bit of a different thought on what a ghost might possibly be. So what I like to think is that we're all in this room now. There's maybe in this house 35 people or so, all hanging around here. And I like to think of the paranormal being all around us at all times. Now, I think there's very few people, and this again is just opinion, there's no right or wrong, all your answers were right in my opinion, as well as this being just strictly opinion. So I don't want anybody to go, he's crazy, go back to the Toys R Us and stare at the shelf, you're nuts. But I like to think of it as very few people in this world, and there's a few probably in this room, that are able to psychically or mentally connect with spirit energy. It's possible to happen, and I've seen it, I believe, in my opinion, happen. But there's probably 1 million people out there who think they can, and out of those 1 million, there's probably 1,000 that actually can. We may have experienced this before, seen it before. Everyone would, not everyone, but a lot of people in the psychic medium world like to think that they can do this, and only some really can. And I believe as paranormal researchers, or paranormal investigators, whatever you want to call us, that the tools we're using things to detect levels of energy. We're using things that will tell you if certain energy levels are in the field and the air surrounding us at different levels. We try to find out what the noises we just heard or the voice we heard on recorder and try to figure out if that's possibly paranormal or if there's another explanation. But none of these tools really help us to connect mentally. I believe whoa, I guess that was the wrong thing. I think I just lost. But the good news is I did get a year's supply of rice-a-roni, so it's not all bad. But what I was saying is I believe that these tools that we use, they're helping us detect what energies may be in the field. So I like to think of a ghost is I think right now, this amount of people in this small area, the conversation we're having, the thoughts that we're thinking about, the stuff we're talking about, we're creating ghosts as we speak. I believe that ghosts are any energy left behind from any building at any time. I don't necessarily believe there's a connection in what we think of in the paranormal investigation world as a deceased spirit ghost, necessarily what we're getting when we're doing our investigations. And let me give you an example, because and again, this is an opinion, and I certainly believe that there is a psychic connection possible with the spirit world. So don't think I'm saying that at all, and I'm not at all. I'm just saying from the research I've done and some of the places I've been to. I'll give you an example. It's a place called the Irish Mist. I'll bring this up again, St. Patrick's Day, but it's out in Troy, New York, which is out by Albany. It's a place that I used to go to every now and then when my mouth was dry or whatever, and I need a little bit of a water, of course. So I had to go in there because they had really cold water. Of course, I wouldn't have any beer or anything. So, go to the Irish Mist and have a couple beers. Never heard any stories about the place being haunted or any activity or anything going on there. But it was an old building. I didn't know the history of the building. And then one day, I was sitting there with the owner, and the owner said to me, "What was that? Did you see that?" And I thought, this guy I said 10 minutes ago, I told him what I did. He said he'd never even heard of ghost hunters. And he's pulling the old, "Did you see that? Come on, that's the oldest one in the book. Everybody knows that, did you see that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, Don?" He's like, "The shadow, it just walked across the bar." And I'm like, "Shadow walked across the bar? What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I didn't see anything." He's like, "Oh, I just saw a shadow across the bar." So I started digging a little bit further and further, and found out that this building actually was one of the first. It's a 4-story building. It was one of the first cast iron stove factories in all of New York State. It opened in 1845, and it was a stove factory up until about 1910. In 1910, I'm just going to grab something here to show you guys. In 1910, they had a pretty horrific fire in this building, and I'll pass this around just because I think it's kind of neat. You guys want to take a look and just, that's all I'll have them this way, and we'll go around. In 1910, they had a huge fire that destroyed the majority of the 3rd and 4th floors of the building. Now, there were never any reported deaths in the building. There were never any reported injuries. But here's the thing. Back in 1910, there weren't a lot of labor laws. There was, however, a lot of children working, and there were a lot of immigrant families who were working against the law and under the table and, this sort of thing. So whether or not there were deaths in the building has never really been determined. There was, however, like I said, this horrific fire. And so as I did more research, I found out that after the fire had happened, the building was abandoned for several years. It opened up in the mid-1800s as an Empire warehouse. So they kept the Empire name. They had it as a storage warehouse for maybe 30 or 40 years. And then it was a hardware store. So I did a little bit more research into the hardware store, because the hardware store was there all the way until, it was called Lindy's Hardware. And it was there probably until 1995. So I did some research and talked to the Lindy family, and the Lindy family started telling me about all kinds of stuff that would happen there. They would be upstairs and they would store all their warehouse, their hardware parts and things in the upstairs of the house. And Mr. Lindy, who was actually a grandson of the original owner of the Lindy's Hardware, told me, grandson or great-grandson, I can't remember, but he told me that his grandfather always heard people calling his name. He'd turn around, nobody would be there, He'd hear weird sounds, weird lights, weird feelings. He'd see shadows walking across, very much similar to what Don had just told me he saw. So, here we are in a little location, no confirmed deaths. So I wanted to do some research. So I talked to Don, and Don's like, yeah, go ahead, we'll set it up. We'll get in there. So I got my recorders in there and did some sessions. The first time I went in there, pretty much nothing. It's pretty dead. We didn't have a lot going on. So I thought, well, yeah, maybe not. Maybe it really isn't active. Second time I went there, I decided to use the SP7, which is a spirit box, ghost box, whatever you want to call it, that runs radio waves. I run it in reverse because radio frequency or white noise. You shouldn't really be able to hear full voices, or certainly not sentences and complete words over it. You certainly do get some radio interference, and you can every now and then, in the middle of your investigation, if you're bored, you might get a little bit of a song playing for a second, but you shouldn't get too much of this stuff. So my son's name is Jordan. So one night, he was actually, he lives quite a far away, and I don't usually bring him to my investigations, but because I was there one time before, it's safe enough, nothing happened, I'll bring him with me. So I don't recommend you all bringing your kids, but so he was in the room with me, and I started saying, can you say hi to Jordan? Can you say hi to Jordan? I'm just kidding around. And clear as day, like you and I sitting here, I hear, hey, Jordan. Right in the spirit box, and he just, he went, I said, did that say what I thought it said? So I said, I think so. So we listened back, and I have a clear EVP of, hey, Jordan. I also, people were kind of saying, well, let's see, do they know who you are? So, I'm like, all right, well, do you know who I am? What is my name? Again, I've got 2 times on an EVP within a matter of about 40 seconds. John Tobin, right there on the EVP. So, again, this is the thing is that there were no confirmed adult deaths for sure at this building. The rumors were that children had died there. We never got a children's voice there. The energy we have got through there, a lot of it comes through the bar area too, which didn't even exist. It wasn't even part of the original warehouse. So it just brings my theory together that perhaps, and there's 2 different terms for this that I've read and that I like to use that they call it let me just get this so I don't mess up my verbiage on this, but a lot of it is called a crisis apparition or a premonition apparition. I like to use these things. So they're ghosts just like any other ghosts you might see, depending on what your thoughts and theories are on this. But a crisis apparition, and I'll use the examples of this fire at this building, the energy left behind from all the commotion and all the crazy and the tragedy, the people rushing out of the building, that kind of energy, with what I would call a crisis apparition, you could see that energy coming back to stay within this building, even though they may not have passed away there, or even though perhaps, in certain circumstances, the people that we're communicating with may not have passed away at all. In a circumstance that I can tell you about that, not happening to me personally, but I did speak to a credible witness who said that her husband was in the Gulf War, and she would wake up in the middle of the night to see his apparition floating above her bed. And she was proven to be sane and all that good stuff, and she could see him clear as day in front of her. Now, he was over in Afghanistan or Iraq, I can't remember which, but she could see clear as day, and then she would immediately think this is some sort of premonition that he must have been hurt or he must have been killed. Why am I seeing this see-through, clear-looking apparition type of thing? As it turned out, she would hear from him a day or 2 later. He was alive and well, but at the time that happened, middle of the night, I don't know if it was, what time it was exactly, but they were under heavy artillery fire. He was in a horrible crisis situation, and she became connected with this apparition of a living person. So, sort of developed my theories around there, and they're out there on the premonition and, the energy theory about how these premonitions can create their own energy fields, and perhaps some of these devices we use, these K2 meters, these EMF detectors, maybe, just maybe, we're picking up the energies of people that may not even be deceased, or may still be alive. People who come here for the next meetup, maybe they'll get some of your voices. Just something to think about. I like to lighten it up to, I saw a comedian who ironically is now since deceased, had a joke where he said, one time I was watching TV late at night, one of these infomercials came on, and it said, forget everything you've ever heard about slipcovers. And then a half an hour later, I saw a commercial about slipcovers. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. So that's what I like to say. Just, forget everything you've ever heard about ghosts, and just open your mind a little bit to the possibilities. I don't think any of us, in our opinions, are wrong, and I don't think any of us are necessarily right. I just think that you have to go with what you believe in, and you have to develop that and believe in it, and come up with reasons why you believe in it. Not just because we've all been told that things are a certain way, because I believe that things are not necessarily all that certain way. And let me give you a real quick story, and then I know everybody wants to investigate, so I won't go on too much longer. But if you don't mind, I want to tell you a little bit of story about how I became interested in the paranormal. It kind of connects to this too. How many people in the room had an experience as a child in the paranormal? A lot of people, right? There, and obviously, a lot of people that I know, when I ask that question, their first experience was paranormal was with the. They don't realize it though. Until they get to be adults or at least teenagers, when they start understanding a little bit about what paranormal means. When I was a kid, I had experiences at 3 or 4 years old, but I thought they were normal. I didn't know that these things didn't happen every day to people because I was 4 or 5, 3, 4 years old. So there was nothing in my mind to tell me what's normal and what's paranormal. I didn't know what the word paranormal was for, so I would. But something about these experiences, I don't know about you guys, but when I had my experiences, I was kind of afraid. I didn't want to go back to my parents and say, hey, Mom, this and this happened, because it felt like it was private for me. So I don't know if you guys had reported what you saw or what happened, but for me, it was very, very particular. I would have experiences. It would usually be when I would lay down in my bed at night, and I would just be able to, at 4 or 5 years old, very vividly, and I wasn't even asleep, I didn't believe, I was in sort of that in-between state, and I could float, what I thought, and it's hard for me to talk about this because I still feel like a wacko when I talk about it, but float around my house and actually observe my own body and the bodies of the people, not only in my house, but I could go out to my yard. I could never leave my property. And I could see this just as clear as I can see you guys. It was very, very real to me. So real to the fact that, in my early 20s, having, this is going to sound funny as I tell you I'm not nuts, having a therapy session, just speaking about normal life, I confronted a therapist and said, I think this was real, but I don't know. And it's when in my early 20s when I really started becoming this paranormal obsession became to me, and I started realizing whatever this experience was, it wasn't normal now. It was a paranormal type of experience. Now, the funny part about this story is when I would do this stuff and I would float around, right before I would either wake up or come back down into my own body, I would see this man. And this man had white hair, a white beard, probably early 50s-ish if I had to guess. Of course, being 4 or 5, I had no clue how old he was. He just looked like Santa. So I would see him almost every single time, actually every time before, and it would usually be right before I came back to my normal state. And I can tell you that my childhood was very tragic. I had a lot of terrible things happen to me that I won't bog you down with, but there's always, a lot of people made a connection between tragedy and incidents that don't normally happen on a daily basis. If any of you guys have experienced some of these things, I hope you haven't, but there may be experiences that you have that aren't normal per se. So that said, when this would happen to me is when I would feel safest. I would feel like I was really myself. I feel like I'm in control. I can watch over and see over everything that's happening, and nothing bad can happen to me when this happens. And then this man would come out, and he would smile and make me feel like I was going to be okay. So, it is what it is. And 20 years later, I started really getting into the paranormal, and I thought, I want to get a little bit in my history, kind of putting them together, going back to where we came. I want to take the history, I want to find out the history of this house. Because before I had the theory that I have now, I thought like most people do, and I thought there had to have been a tragedy at this house, there had to have been a death, something had to happen for all this, for me to be floating around and have these paranormal experiences and see this guy that must have been a ghost. So I did some research on the house. I found out that before my parents owned the house, I had one owner before it was built. The owner lived there since, 2 owners, his father, and he got the house from his father. The gentleman's name was George Weaver, and I did some looking him down. This was back in the early 90s when I started really doing this research. And so I got out and I did my Alta Vista search. Of course, we all do that still today, right? I think they call it Google now. My Alta Vista search. I typed in George Weaver. I typed in the address. I tried to find her. I hit enter, and 15 minutes later, there's name. Back in dial-up days, when you wait for the little thing to do. Yeah, that was great. Thank God I went out to do research with that now. But so I found out where George Weaver lived, and so I'm a very curious guy. You can call me Curious John. I had to go find out. I had to go meet George Weaver and find out the history of the house. I'm like, I couldn't find any history online back then. Probably couldn't find any now. I didn't think to go to the Historical Society Hall of Records. I thought, just go to George Weaver. He used to live there. Did anything happen to him? Let me go find out. So George Weaver only lived probably 20 minutes from where I lived. I drove out there one day, not having any idea what to expect. I knocked on George's door. Woman came to the door. I said, hi, is Mr. Weaver? I didn't really know for sure if he still lived there. I mean, it was the internet, and, who knows? So, I don't know, oh, yeah, who's asking? I said, my name's John. He doesn't know me, but I just wanted to ask him a few questions and doing some historical research on the house he used to live in. So, I stood there for a minute. Saw this guy come to the door, probably at this point about 70 years old. White hair, white beard. That's the guy that I saw in my dream. In my, whatever it was, dream. And he looked at me like he was going to pass out. I looked at him like I was going to throw up. And he said 2 words to me. He said, "You're safe." And, from that point on, me and Mr. Weaver became pretty good friends. And he said he actually had the same experience. He would wake up in the middle of the night seeing a young boy crying, and it was me. It looked like me.
Wow.
And,
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's crazy.
And so,
Oh my God.
this is where I've developed my theory over the years and made my connection between not everything paranormal is related to death and deceased and tragedy. Sometimes it can be, your best friend when you need one. It can be something guiding you or looking out for you. And that was the most profound paranormal experience I ever had. And if anyone has one like that, again, I'd love to hear about it. If anyone's had any experiences similar, please let me know about that. But without further ado, as I like to say on my radio show quite a bit, I want to tell you just a couple things. My team, Glory Haunt Hounds, I do have some t-shirts for sale here, $15 for t-shirts, and I have hoodies too. I think they're 33. Again, the show's on Monday nights, 8 p.m., ParaX, www.para-x.com. Also available on iTunes, so if you go to the iTunes store and search Keeping the Spirits Alive, it's myself and my buddy Chip, who's not here tonight. He's in Florida, lucky him, but I'd rather be here, so it's good. So you search Keeping the Spirits Alive on iTunes. You can listen to the show that way. We have a lot of great guests on. A couple weeks ago we had Josh Gates on. I've got Joe Chin on in the week after next, and John Zaffis coming up and things like that. So we've got some good guests coming up on the show. And then I wanted to just take a quick, brief second to tell you about this event I mentioned earlier. It's called Preserving the Haunt Parahistory Con. It has John Zaffis. It has Brian Cano, Reverend Tim Shaw, who's been here. Adam Berry from Ghost Hunters, Joe Chin from Ghost Hunters, Aaron Sagers from the Travel Channel, Daniel Hooven from Bio Channel, John Tenney, who is an amazing, amazing lecturer. It's going to be out in Lake George, so it's a little ways from here, but we think it's going to be a great event. My friends at Beyond Ghost are helping me with this event, and we've put together all these great talents to come together and talk about the paranormal and history. We're going to do a VIP party on Friday night where everyone's going to hang out and have a few waters and listen to my buddy Mike DJ. It's going to be a good time. Saturday we're going to have a convention with lectures all through the day. We're going to be screening the movie Please Talk With Me, which I mentioned earlier, as well as another movie called Shattered Hopes, which is supposedly the true story of the Amityville murders. Not the haunting, but the murders that happened before then. Another excellent movie. And we'll have lectures throughout the day. I'll always find people, myself included. I don't know if I'm going to find people, but I'll be there. Then we're going to actually, Saturday night, we're going to have a ghost hunt at Fort William Henry, which is the site of one of the biggest massacres in the French and Indian War. It's going to be phenomenal, and you get a chance to ghost hunt with John Zaffis and Adam Berry. And Adam, the cool thing about Adam Berry, you guys watch Ghost Hunters? You guys in here watch the show Ghost Hunters at all? A few of you? Some of you? That very first investigation Adam had with Ghost Hunters was at Fort William Henry. So he's really excited to get back there and investigate again. Information and tickets on this event are available on my website, which is gloryhaunthounds.com, www.gloryhaunthounds.com. I'll be glad to give you any information you might need or any questions you have later on for that. And also, it sounds silly, I have 8x10s for $5 that I'll sign and whatever, who knows, right? Maybe one day someone will be like, oh, I remember that guy. Probably not. But. So if anyone wants any of that stuff, please feel free to see me after. I'm going to let Belief take it over from here. We're going to go find us some ghosts. Thank you very much.
Real quick, also, I will post the link for your event